The Avatar of Cain. Welcome, gentle listener, I am Voldemort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and units of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we shall be discussing the very basics of one of the most powerful beings that remains in the galaxy. A thing of ancient days, a being of almost unlimited wrath. From the darkest days of the war in heaven it trudges through the ages, acquiring a wake of such destruction that few beings can compare to its slay stack, the blood on its hands. A pun, of course, as I can only be speaking of the Avatar of Khaela Mensha Khaine, the bloody-handed god, the Aeldari god of war and murder. For blood perpetually weeps from his left gauntlet, as a curse from the lord of the Eldar pantheon, Azuman. A curse for slaying the first hero of the Eldar, and their first king, Eldanesh. If you wish to listen to an elongated story of the beginning of the Warhammer universe and the Great War in Heaven, then it might be best to skip to watch or listen to a video that I performed about the Silent King. The links will be in the description. A two-parter which is never popular, I know, but it is still one of my better videos, I believe. So we shall be doing highlights in this video itself. And so, for the very basics, let us explore this character together. This ancient personification of the warlike nature of the Eldar, their god, Khaine. To quote,
"Behold, the fiery destroyer of worlds. I walk again, a god among mere mortals."
The Avatar of Cain, Dawn of War. End quote. The Avatar of Cain, a being of immense power, now shattered and dispersed amongst the craft worlds of his people, the Eldar. He was broken, but never beaten by the dark god Slaanesh. Even she who thirsts could not consume or destroy him utterly. He is that potent. Yet what is he? Where does he come from? What does he do? Now that is a very long tale indeed, but I shall attempt to make a fist of trying to synopsize it, to make this entry self-contained. For he comes from the darkest days of the galaxy, a period that would make the Horus Heresy, or even the Cybernetic Revolt, look like a child's tantrum by comparison. For the Avatar of Cain is a construct, or so I believe. It is called a god, but it is nothing like the other beings that are given that epithet. He comes from a different time, a different universe almost. For so much has changed since then. So much. Now it is an attested fact that the Eldar were created, honed and augmented, specifically built, some say, for the act of war. They were brought up by the Old Ones, hyper-powerful psychers and some of the first beings to gain sentience in the galaxy. The Old Ones were in a war, you see. A war that they could not win. The other major sentients that arose at that time were the Necrontyr, who later became the Necrons. Twisted and their minds transferred to the unfeeling soulless vessels now known as the Necrons. They had begun a war against the Old Ones for a variety of reasons, but the main one was that they required an enemy to bring unity back to their empire. The ruling Chark needed an external threat to stop the potential of secession from their far-flung empire. The Necrontyr were cruel and had no appreciation for life. None below them, certainly. So they were a vile enemy to the Old Ones, who grew the peoples of the galaxy, shepherded them, guided them. To see the Necrontyr wipe them out was a pain the Old Ones could not abide. And when the Necrontyr met the Old Ones, they saw their health, vitality, and immortality, and became jealous. For theirs had been a cursed existence, but for the reasons why, do return to the Silent King video. It is not short. The Necrontyr were defeated by the Old Ones, almost easily, but the Necrontyr did not forget, never forgave. So they made contact with the dark beings known as the Khaine, their star gods. Beings of immense power who were entirely energy, like vampires moving from star to star, consuming them over hundreds of thousands of years. But the Necrontyr gave them physical bodies made of necrodermis, and the Khaine then made common cause with them, stating that the Khaine had long ago fought the Old Ones and lost also. Potentially a lie, but none can now tell. They offered the long-wanted immortality to the Necrontyr, a way to escape death and pain forever. So the Necrontyr were tricked into what is now known as the biotransference, their minds being transferred to metallic bodies. Alas, the process stripped them of their very souls. Soul energy that the Khaine consumed and used to augment their power exponentially. The new unliving soulless legions of the Necrons linked with the godlike powers of the Khaine, and they went on the attack. They drove the Old Ones before them, unleashing power the likes has never been seen before or since. And over millions of years of combat, unfettered war, they were winning. The Old Ones fought as hard as they could, knowing that the Khaine and their Necrons were the very manifestation of what they would call evil, by their definitions at any rate. So they used every tool in their considerable arsenal, and their greatest strength after their massive psychic powers and their webway, which gave them supreme strategic advantage, was their genetic skill. So the Old Ones did the unthinkable, to stop the unrelenting. They created warrior races to match the Necrons and Khaine. And thus, the Eldar and Krork, Knib, Rashan and Jakera were all developed, possibly more. Like we humans would develop a tank or a plane or a gun. They were weapons. Yet some were more effective than others, what I like to think of as the arms race in full swing. We can track it by the brutality and effectiveness of the beings created. For the last to be forged must surely have been the Eldar and the Krork, for they combined so many abilities that seem to have been trialled in previous attempts. But I digress. The Eldar were created to face the power of the Khaine. Yes, the Necrons as well, of course, but I have always felt that they were mainly a weapon against the Khaine, and that the Krork, what then devolved into the Orcs, were made to fight the Necrons themselves. For the Eldar are the most gifted and powerful psychos to come from that period, and the Khaine only had one known weakness: their vulnerability to the powers of the warp, the abilities expressed by psychos, though so adeptly wielded by the Eldar. So, to me at least, it makes sense that they were the anti-Khaine force, the anti-Khaine race. The Orcs clearly designed to grind down Necron formations. Yet the Old Ones made mistakes with the Eldar that they did not make with the Orcs. For the Eldar mythology has so many hints at civil war, faction fighting, a lack of respect for the Old Ones, and the need for independence. They were weapons that thought they outgrew or should not be constrained by the needs of their creators. They were thinking beings, and did not simply do as instructed. Yet the mythology also talks of the battles with the Ingir and the Ogir, the Eldar names for the Khaine and the Necrons. They definitely fought them in titanic battles, forged weapons that were the bane of their enemies. Some say that the Blackstone fortresses are the trinkets of Val, the Eldar equivalent of Vulcan or Hephaestus, weapons from the period of the War in Heaven. Though new data seems to show that they are potentially other origins for the immensely powerful stations, but that is for another time again. So the Eldar were intensely powerful psychers, and they were tasked with defeating entities like Azagorod, horrors. Now in high magics, there is a thing called a thought form, a being constructed of energies from a group of wizards, each sacrificing a part of their essence, a small sliver of their minds and souls, to be incorporated into one being. A thing that can be tasked to perform duties for the coven, or group. What I surmise is that the pantheon of the Eldar are more akin to this. In my mind, The Old Ones showed the Eldar how to control the powers of the warp so much better than they could even do now. They were able to join tiny fractions of millions of Eldar to create these weapons. For they were not gods then, but mere psychic suits, one might say. Like a magical entity given attributes to perform a specific task. I have other theories on why this was done. Why they became known as gods, became revered and venerated, instead of seen for what they are, the last vestiges of the might and teachings of the Old Ones. For the Eldar have forgotten more of their powers and knowledge than any other, even the Imperium, from my reading of the lore. They are shadows of their former might, but they were so even before the fall, even before their empire was destroyed by their own indolence and feckless self-indulgence. From my perspective, the Eldar path is only necessary as they strayed from the worship of their gods, the weapons we have mentioned. The Eldar of the Warhammer setting are far more akin to the Vulcans and Romulans of Star Trek than ever they were analogies of the stargazing beings of Tolkien's Middle-earth. They are filled with rage and pride, love and laughter, to an extent that other races could not imagine, would be both jealous and intimidated, or even petrified by. The experience of the Eldar is heightened to an almost excruciating degree. Most other species would fare far worse if they had that intensity of sensation and emotion to try to control. And it is my belief that the Eldar gods, those ancient archetypes forged during the war in heaven, were in fact siphons, are in fact siphons, akin to the vortex used in the fantasy setting, one might say. But instead of drawing off the excess winds of magic, the beings were sustained, yes, but also used as a reservoir of power. They were where the extremes of emotion and power were sent to control the existence of the Eldar. I believe this for multiple reasons, but the most telling, for me at least, is that the power of Slaanesh, she who thirsts, grew only when the Eldar turned from the set path that had maintained them for scores of millions of years. They renounced their faith. They forgot to give supplication to their gods. They did not hold them in their hearts. They did not have their prayers on their lips. Thus, from my reading of the lore, the Eldar no longer sent some of their madness, their exalted overstimulation from a galaxy that broke their hearts with its beauty. And they welled up, spiritually, psychically. And so their only outlet became the increasing fixations, obsessions, that then degenerated to the lowest depths as their need for greater stimulation or release gave them diminished returns, as all perversions inexorably do. Their fall can be catalogued as being directly linked to when they stopped praying. Now we know that faith or excess emotion can generate beings in the warp, as it was with Khorne and Nurgle, Tzeentch and then Slaanesh. But the other three were more formed by humanity, and I stated formed, not entirely generated. But we will discuss that again in the future. So where was the energy from the Eldar going for millions upon millions of years, when they were no less passionate, no less excessive, if we can be frank? I believe it went to their thought forms. And I believe that the need for the craft worlder's path is basically because these thought forms, their gods, no longer exist for them to use as repositories of their excess power. So they suppress it instead. Personally, I also believe that when the Black Library concentrates its efforts on the Eldar again, that we may see thought forms, new minor gods appear, that they will be minor manifestations of the path, like the dark muses of the Drukhari, lesser beings, and there is a lot going on spiritually for the Eldar. Now, we know what, I believe, came to be, how he was formed and when. But what is his history? Where does he go from here? What happened during and after the war in heaven? Simple. He has been the Lord of Carnage and Slaughter. He was Khorne to the Eldar way before the humans made their own version in the dark depths of the warp. As an archetype, he is the embodiment of all warlike urges, But not all of those urges are wrong or bad. For the fires of Cain are what makes an Eldar fight for his family, his clan, his race, and his home. The fires of Cain are what motivate the craft-worlders to mobilize for war and constantly battle the forces of chaos across the galaxy. They are what makes the Eldar the premier warrior race in the galaxy. For that is undeniable. Pound for pound, man for man, not even the orcs come close to the lethality of the Eldar. None can match their rage or speed. None. Not even in the throes of the Black Rage will a Blood Angel ever approach the bloodlust of the Drukhari. Never will a son of Rus be more enwrapped before a battle in the mere smell of their quarry. Thus the Eldar must have their god of war, but he is an honestly named being as well, for he is the god of murder. There are many tales of Cain. I cannot go into all of them in this one entry, as I shall save them for a look into Eldar mythology at a later date. But he has always been the second most powerful of all of the gods of the Aeldari. Only above him is Azulman, the king of the gods. And he was always at odds with Kurnus the hunter and Isha the mother. They are the gods who wed and bred the children of Isha, the Eldar. And Cain has always been jealous of the love of Kurnus and Isha, wanting to possess her himself. Thus does he secretly hate the Eldar in many tales. Struck down their first hero and king, Eldanesh, as he would not renounce them and worship Cain alone, which is where he gained his curse from Azulman, that his hand would always drip with blood in memory of this act of butchery. He captured the parents of the Eldar and was only ever confronted by Vaul, the smith god, as Azulman stayed aloof. Now the tale of how Vaul made 100 swords for Cain, but one was not complete, is legend. So he hid it amongst the rest, amongst the perfect blades of power and might that only Vaul could have made. And he fled with Isha and Kurnus, the weapons as Wergeld. All I believe to be analogies. Simple stories of the Eldar history, that the true meaning of which has been lost. For I think that we can read the legends from the eyes of a deeper understanding. Perhaps the Eldar god of war, Khaela Mensha Cain, was not directly killing or at war with the Eldar, not manifesting and butchering them. But it was an analogy for his drive taking over, him whipping the people into such a state of rage that they fought without restraint, without consideration to losses and replenishment. With so many stories of hawks and other factions, it seems to me that the Eldar culture was taking itself to death. They did not replenish as fast as the Krork, yet they hated the Ingir and Ogier with a passion even their green-skinned allies could not match. I personally believe that the tales of Cain threatening the Eldar are actually that the war was being fought so hard that their numbers were dwindling. That they had to pull back and resist the pull of Cain, which had been bred into them by the Old Ones, or face self-inflicted annihilation at the hands of their creator's enemies. I can imagine that this would not be heralded or lauded by the Old Ones, who must have been on their knees to require so much support from their created thrall species. Could that be the genesis of the hints of rebellion against the Old Ones? And it would be so easy to see why. The Eldar, at the darkest moments, when the Old Ones were being crushed, suddenly declared they would need to scale back their efforts, would need to step back. If this were the case, then it must have been a blow to the Old Ones, a harsh and bitter blow. But at any rate, the Eldar came out of the Enslaver Plague and then the War in Heaven entire, one of the strongest races left. For the Necrons were beaten, having turned on their own Catan lords when the Old Ones were destroyed. That cataclysmic battle drained their resources to near depletion. And so, the Necrons went into hibernation, fleeing through time from an Eldar race that had harbored its strength and was now expanding at a terrifying rate, wielding psychic powers that only their Ingir masters could ever counter, their Old Ones' tech still available and freshly forged, and that was without taking into consideration the vast hordes of the elite Krork forces. For then, they were elite. So the Necrons fled into stasis, and the Eldar turned on the Krork, and culled them so viciously that they lost critical mass and numbers, and devolved into the Orcs, a sad echo of their own power. Taken by the Eldar, who then continued to cull them for the next 20 to 40 million years or more, depending on the sources. The Eldar stood alone, the most powerful of all of the survivors of the war, who were few. The Rasharn, Khanib, Jakero, and Krork. The Eldar now ruled the galaxy, and did so until the lead up to the Fall, where, for a fleeting few thousand years, they witnessed the growth of the last of their sibling species, the last of the creations of the Old Ones rise. They saw humanity at its golden heights, and I feel that that too contributed to their demise. Certainly, it could have sped it. Yet in all that time, in all those millions of years of near undisputed rulership of the Milky Way, they did not do something obvious, something humanity would have done were their roles reversed. They did not push out. They sat on their haunches, lording it over all, indisputably, yet they did not explore further. But this takes us down an entirely different rabbit hole, so again, it will be addressed in due course. Apologies. Khaine has always been a protector of the Eldar, sometimes its greatest threat according to the mythic cycles of these peoples. But how did he get the way he is now? How did he become the Avatar of Cain, and not just Khaine? And that is answered in 2 words. The Fall. Slaanesh, she who thirst's birth scream wiped the Eldar Empire away in 1 second. She then ascended and moved through the warp, her new realm, tracking and destroying, then consuming the entire pantheon of the Eldar. Well, nearly. Asuman, Kurnus, others, all consumed in short order. But Segara, the laughing god of the Harlequins, hid behind Khaine, then slipped off into the webway while they fought. Ishur was captured by Grandfather Nurgle, taken to his garden, and Slaanesh has never managed to lay claim to her since. But Khaela Mensha Cain was mighty. He was experienced at war with beings of the warp, and he fought. And his power was such that Slaanesh, despite gorging on the vast majority of the souls of an entire race, having been augmented by the power of the pantheon she had consumed, even then, she barely held Khaine, could not consume or destroy him. And when Khorne, the blood god, came to step in and claim him for his own, Khaine was shattered and disappeared. His soul was broken and sent to the central space of each craft world of the Eldar. Some suspect many world spirits of the Exodite Eldar as well. Although finding confirmation is eluding me at the present, I tend to believe this. And in the heart of each shrine, a statue of prodigious size appeared. It was an avatar of the bloody-handed god, and it can be summoned to life. The young king. There is an ancient ceremony, the rite of the young king. This is how the avatar is awoken for war. When the craft world is about to set off on the path of Cain, there will be rumblings in the shrine. Waves of aggression will be sent there and then augmented and reflected out. All can feel that the avatar is calling to be awoken. If this is due to him being roused by the feelings of the Eldar, their subconscious minds rising in their tributes that are his, or if he is the cause, none can say, but it is obvious. And when there is need for his might on the battlefield, then there must always be a sacrifice. The young king. For a motive force must be added to the fires of Cain, a soul to move the force it contains. So the greatest of the exarchs of Cain's aspect shrines is brought forward. With much pomp and pageantry, he or she is led to the doors of the shrine to enter alone. When the doors shut, there is often a blood-curdling wail of anguish. None know if the soul is taken from the body, or if the pain is its merger with the Avatar. But the young king, as an Eldar warrior, is no more. And the statue is given fire and lava as its blood. Waves of heat and hatred and bloodlust emanate from the Avatar as it strides forth to war. All Eldar near it are filled with rage, and all fear and vestiges of their beautiful souls are washed away, replaced with the fires of wrath for war. The Avatar of Cain, though a mote of dust in comparison to his full splendor of old, is still an adversary of tremendous might. Gargantuan in size, the weapon it wields is no less mystic or powerful, for it is the Wailing Doom. The weapon, be it an axe, a spear, or, most commonly, a sword, is made of the same stuff, embodies the same properties as that of the statue, the Avatar. For its drawing or positioning for the strike evokes an increase in the background moans that perpetually leap from it. The sound becomes a screech when it is employed in the midst of battle, and it can fire eldritch blasts of the same lava that flows through the Avatar's veins. A blast of heat and fire and rock that can pierce near any armor, burn all it comes into contact with. And in close quarters, in melee, the weapon is one of legend, for it sears the very air it passes through, scorching away the water there with a sizzle, fires leaping from its edges to burn away chaos, corruption, or anything it comes into contact with. Again, nothing can stay the blade of the Wailing Doom. There is no defeating it, bar avoiding its touch. And the god of war, Khaine, has the skill of old. He fights with the speed of Farshu, the strength of a god, the ability of the best Eldar souls from the beginning of the galaxy until its present time. He is the Eldar Lord of War, and he is near unstoppable. Only at the end, when he has been pulled apart fully, or, more likely, he has slaughtered all before him, led his species into the fires of the enemy's guns, and made them roll over said lines, said fires, without mercy, remorse, or restraint. For when the Avatar is on the field, the Eldar know nothing of these traits. So intoxicated with the will of the fire of Khaine are they, so close to Khorne in so many ways, and yet eternally different. While Khorne is a dark god of chaos, he is a fundamental force that was twisted into evil. He was meant to be honor and the life urge, the will to resist, to harness fire and to defend the tribe. Yet Khaine is in some ways darker to me, for he was made this way on purpose. He is not honorable. He is a god of murder as much as war, and he slew Eldanish without pause. He is no hero. He is no good god. Despite that he is needed, he is the bloody-handed one, and even Khorne would deride some of his actions, dark god of chaos though he might be. But again, my own take on both entities. So if it whets the appetite, then explore more for yourself. You may have a very different take. Now there will always be those who point to the many times he has been slain or defeated. To be frank, this is true. Some state that the easiest way to enshrine a new character is to have it defeat an existing one, so others can gauge their power, their importance. Yet this seems to have happened a few too many times with the Avatar, that it is now becoming somewhat predictable. A bit of a meme, as the Kula Tuba lore commentariat might say. It is difficult to refute, for the Primarch Fulgrim was an understandable match against the god of war, the Primarchs being demigods of war, one might say themselves. But it has fallen to chapter masters and even captains of the Astartes to now duff one up to prove their mettle. I prefer to think of these as lesser avatars myself, for it must be conceded that the Avatar of Cain is just that, a small tiny part of him. So it is not strange that he is so fallible, so vulnerable. But if he were ever to rejoin again, now that would be another matter. And I find it strange the potentials for the Eldar plot are so very full at the present. Some say that they have been neglected, that the foray into the Ynnari did not prove popular, hence the company put on hold further development. I prefer to think that they are playing the long game, as usual. I choose to believe that the plot has moved on quite nicely for the Eldar, and that they are now about to have much more revealed about them, about their cause, about their future, about their activities. I choose to believe that the coming of Inyad is not as simple as an attempt to change or diversify the ways that Eldar models are played. Something that I have been thinking about since I did those atrocious prognostications at the very start of my run has been the import of the number 3 in the Eldar mythology. The maiden, mother and crone of Celtic faith, which is what the Eldar pantheon is clearly based on, the Tuatha De Danann, etc. But 3 is so very important. And now, for the first time since the fall, there are 3 Eldar gods abroad. The Trickster, Sigora, the Warlord, Khaine, and the newest god, the god of the dead, Inyad. And could they not combine their might to push things to regain their lost sibling, Isha? For even the humans have invaded the Garden of Nurgle recently, unless I'm mistaken, of course. Not leaning on existing wisdom, as I usually do. Other nuggets of lore also indicate the potential for change, for development. The pylons around the Eye of Terror are old Necron artifacts. In fact, they are part of the very ring of worlds around the Eye, the Old Eldar Empire, that could well be the genesis of the tale of the separation of the two realms, the Materium and the Immaterium, the real world and the warp, for once they were joined. But Asaman broke them apart, separating them so Khaine could not hunt and kill all of the Eldar, as a prophecy arose that it would be the Eldar that would be his undoing. As it was, of course. But what if this was not the case? What if the separation of realms was the doing of the Necrons, and not Asaman at all? And those pylons are now down, destroyed when a black stone fortress was hurled at Cadia by Abaddon the Despoiler. When Cadia broke, the planet shattering, then the ring was also broken. And the Cicatrix Maledictum, the great tear across reality, ripped across the stars, finding the weak points from previous tears, previous blemishes, the vestiges of the birth pangs of the existing gods, in my opinion. The world was torn asunder, and warp now bleeds into reality. The realms are clearly trying to return to what I believe was their initial state of being. One. But if this were to happen, then surely Khaine might be able to ascend again. If the boundaries betwixt the warp and real space are so thin now, then perhaps he could pierce the veil and reform in that realm again. If he did this with Inyad and Sigora, possibly even with reclaimed Isha, then perhaps, just perhaps, they might be able to conclude the dance begun by Sigora, the trick he plays, and perhaps they could end in defeating she who thirsts. And if they can do that, then the road to reincarnation, the road back to the immortality of the souls of the Eldar could be returned. And when they have that back, are able to increase their numbers again, then the entire galaxy should prepare to bow before its ultimate warrior species once more. For nothing, and I mean nothing, could stop a resurgent Eldar race when roused to war. I have been Voldemort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to the bloody-handed Avatar of Cain. If so, then please consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.